Hello BookTube, I'm Jonathan, and recently I've been trying to add more short stories to my sci-fi reading schedule for two reasons. Firstly, they're an important part of science fiction history, and secondly, it's a good way to get a taste for an author's writing style and see if you want to grab one of their books. So I decided to turn this into a bit of a game, where I pick up a short story collection, select and read some of the authors in that collection that are on my TBR, and then whichever short story I like the most, I'll purchase a book from that author. I made a video playing this game with stories from the Science Fiction Hall of Fame Volume 1 with classic sci-fi stories, mostly from the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. So I decided to pick up another collection focusing on new wave sci-fi from the 1960s with the 1967 collection Dangerous Visions, which was edited by Harlan Ellison. I was already familiar with around half of the authors in this collection, but I wanted to try some new authors, so I selected 5 of the authors that I haven't read before, and I'm going to be discussing each of their stories and let you know which one was my favorite. So let's get started with John Sladek. Dangerous Visions was actually the first time that Sladek had one of his stories published. He would go on to write a number of short stories as well as science fiction novels, as well as some mystery novels and 2 books that he co-authored with friend and fellow writer Thomas M. Disch. Some of his notable works include Roderick, which was nominated for a Philip K. Dick Award, and TikTok, which won the BSFA Award for Best Novel in 1983. So the story he wrote for Dangerous Visions was titled The Happy Breed. The story is set in a near future where all ailments, both physical or psychological, are taken care of by machines. This is a world without pain or burden, but the story examines whether this comes at the cost of individuality or intellectual development. The story has a satirical tone and has some dark humor in it. Sladek was perhaps a little overambitious with how rapidly he projected technology might develop by the 1980s, but that didn't really bother me because I don't necessarily read science fiction as predictions, but rather more often thought experiments, and I think the themes explored in this one are still relevant today. Overall, I did enjoy this story, and I would definitely consider reading more from Sladek in the future. Up next we have David R. Bunch. David R. Bunch was the only writer in Dangerous Visions to have 2 of their stories featured in the collection, and they both are rather short. He primarily wrote in the short story format and is most well known for his stories in his Modoran universe, as well as his collection Bunch, that was nominated for a Philip K. Dick Award in 1993. The first story of his included in the collection is titled The Incident in Modoran. In this future world, cyborgs seem to be at perpetual war and accumulate things known as hate points. This was another story I found darkly funny, and I'll have to read more from Bunch in order to flesh out this comparison, but in the story I noticed just a little bit of a hint of Kurt Vonnegut, and as you may know, he's one of my all-time favorite writers. The second story of his is titled The Escaping, and I'll be honest, I'm not exactly sure how to describe this one because it felt like an LSD-induced fever dream. And that was a kind of cool experience for the short story format, but I'm not sure how engaging that writing style would remain if it went on for the entirety of a novel. Of the 2, I definitely preferred The Incident in Modoran, which is fortunate because Bunch wrote a lot within that universe. For our third author, we have Harlan Emshwiller. Harlan Ellison wrote in the science fiction, fantasy, and magical realism genres, and had works published from the 1950s all the way up to the 2010s. Her most highly acclaimed work is her 2002 novel The Mount, which was nominated for the Nebula Award and won the Philip K. Dick Award. The title of her short story published in Dangerous Visions is Sex and/or Mr. Morrison. The story is narrated by a woman that is obsessed with a man in her building named Mr. Morrison. It places you in the mind of a stalker, and it's equally unsettling as it is intoxicating. Emshwiller does an excellent job of crafting a character that is able to perfectly rationalize what is entirely irrational behavior. The story also incorporates some rather elusive sci-fi concepts that are open to interpretation and beg to be analyzed and debated on a reread. This wasn't necessarily the most fun read, but it's definitely one that I will remember for a long time. And just before we get to our next author, if you're interested in what sci-fi book I'll be reading next, stick around to the end of the video where I will be spinning the Quantum Wheel in order to find out the Patron pick of the month for the month of September. Okay, moving on, we have R.A. Lafferty. Lafferty wrote in the science fiction and fantasy genres, as well as historical fiction and non-fiction. His novels Fourth Mansions and The Devil is Dead were nominated for the Nebula Award, his novel Past Master was nominated for the Nebula and Hugo, and his short story Eurema's Dam won the Hugo Award in 1973. Lafferty's story in Dangerous Visions is titled Land of the Great Horses. Land of the Great Horses is a mind-bending story in which the topography of an area in India is not what travelers expect it to be, and Romani people from around the world are drawn to it. The story is rather confusing and has a little bit of a trippy feel to it, but towards the end there is an explanation provided for what is going on. I think the idea that is revealed towards the end is rather clever, but overall I'm still not sure how much I actually enjoyed reading this one. I'm intrigued by Lafferty's writing style, but this one didn't top my list. And finally, Norman Spinrad. Norman Spinrad wrote science fiction novels as well as short stories and garnered attention for pushing boundaries when it came to the themes of sex, drugs, and politics. His novels The Iron Dream and The Void Captain's Tale were nominated for the Nebula Award, and his 1969 novel Bug-Jack Baron was nominated for both the Nebula and the Hugo. Spinrad's contribution to Dangerous Visions was titled Carcinoma Angels. The premise for Carcinoma Angels is that a man who has achieved financial and personal success is diagnosed with terminal cancer. He takes his almost unlimited resources and pushes his physical, psychological, and spiritual limits in order to try and find a cure. And while this might not sound like a comedic story, Spinrad takes this idea-driven premise and explores it in a humorous way. It's an intriguing setup, and Spinrad develops the narrative with visceral imagery and a memorable ending. Spinrad certainly has a unique writing style, and it might not be for everyone, but I'm definitely interested in reading something else from him in order to compare. So those are the 5 authors I picked, which begs the question, which one is the winner? When I played this game with the Science Fiction Hall of Fame Volume 1, there was a clear winner, but this time around it's not so easy because I really liked 4 of those 6 stories. If I have to choose one, I think I'm going to go with Sex and or Mr. Morrison by Harlan Ellison. For the reason that I think of all the stories that I read, this will be the one that I remember most vividly years from now. So with Emshwiller being the winner, I decided to pick up a copy of her book, The Mount, in which the main character Charlie is a human mount, the property of one of the alien invaders known as the Hoots. So let me know your thoughts on that one if you've read it. And I'll be honest, I did cheat a little bit because I also bought a copy of Modoran by David R. Bunch. I really like that story and I'm definitely interested in reading more from that universe. So there you go, I think we had some success with these stories. Let me know your favorite Dangerous Visions stories in the comments. And just quickly before we wrap up, if you're interested in what I'm going to be reading in the month of September, join me now as we head over to the Quantum Wheel. Welcome to the Quantum Wheel, where all of the patron picks are both simultaneously picked and not picked until we observe a winner. Let's find out what I'll be reading in the month of September. Will it be on brand? Will it be new ones? Will it be a different subgenre of sci-fi? It looks like it might be Eon. Greg Bear. Greg Bear. On the harder end of the sci-fi spectrum, I believe. Big Dumb Object subgenre, so I have been told. So I'm looking forward to that one. I really liked Blood Music, so it'll be interesting to see how Eon compares. So there you go. If you're interested in that one, join me in the month of September. As always, discount links for any of the books that I discuss in my videos in the description. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash or just gently click the subscribe button. And if you really enjoyed it, consider checking out the perks of becoming a Patreon member, such as getting to vote on the Quantum Wheel, where you can become one of my robots, androids, or cyborgs like Nima, A New Eden, Half Ogre, Zakawe, and the Psychedelic Colin. And you can find more sci-fi content over here.